It's time to sync up our watches and let's go back to July 23rd, 1985. That's when Jay Miner and his cool dog Mitchie, who had a pass to get into Commodore, invented the Commodore Amiga computer. Back in the mid-80s, computers were kind of a bit naff, and you could get things like modems and things like that, but that was for your proper people who like were in whiz kids and stuff like that, and having the computer sent to them by dads that worked at NASA. But for anybody in the real world, most people had computers that were black and white, 4 colours or 8 colours or something like that, 8K, processors that run at 1 megahertz. Then along comes the Commodore Amiga, 4,096 colours. No more loading off tape, it was all diskettes. My first proper introduction to the Amiga, obviously I saw it in magazines and people talked about it at school and stuff like that, but my sister used to run a catalogue, and quite popular in the 80s because, you know, higher purchase and things like that. You know, people who, you know, couldn't afford, you know, shelling out 400 quid for an Amiga straight off the bat. But somehow, and to this day, I still don't know how I managed to convince my sister to let me order an Amiga out there. I said, yeah, I'll definitely pay, and I had it on some insane payment scheme where it was like £1 for 1,000 weeks, and of course as soon as the Amiga came I was like, I'll give you 8 quid in 6 months, and my sister was like, oh, I'll just pay it off. And so my sister paid it off, probably only got paid off about 2 weeks ago because of how long the payment scheme was. And then me and my mate went in Dixon's, you know, felt like 2 weeks, but I think it was 6 months after I had this computer, and it was like, coming soon, the Amiga 1200, and it said 16 million colours, and it's like even possible, what does that even mean? It's like mind blowing. And so, but like, my mate got that computer, like blew my computer out of the water, but I got to use his computer and my computer, so it's best of both worlds, right? And yeah, I guess most people watching this, I know I did just mention them briefly just, but I'd say no more of that, you know, R-tape loading nightmares. It was like, the games come on these discs and they had this like little cool protective sleeve there for sort of, it was like armour plating for the discs, but that was always cool. And talking about really cool as well, flight sims were pretty big back in the day, and like, I know hardcore PC gamers use them now, but flight sims were like everywhere, and they really took some pride with them, you know, years ago. Look at this manual. Like, this is no word of a joke. The phone book isn't this thick anymore, but look how good this manual is. Just a cool like sort of design of it and cool artwork inside and things like that. And I always really used to feel with this that, you know, you could probably land a plane or make a helicopter take off from this. I'm sure Ace Magazine even did a feature about it once, like, can you survive a plane crash if, you know, just by looking at these manuals. And my probably favourite flight sim from back in the day was this F-18 Interceptor game. Always used to start off with this cool chime, and I know now that because I was the last person in the world to see Top Gun, it's like referencing Top Gun, but I always think of Dawn of the Dead. The ending of Dawn of the Dead has got this bell chime in it. It just always reminds me of Dawn of the Dead. But my 2 favourite parts for this game were try and fly under the Golden Gate Bridge. I always think that was the coolest thing. I was like, yay! And there's this one mission where you had to take off from an aircraft carrier and land on the same aircraft carrier. And I could only do it one way, literally by taking off, doing a half loop-the-loop, flying backwards directly over the aircraft carrier, correcting the loop-the-loop, so it's a perfect straight line. I couldn't go left or right any other way, else it would be a complete nightmare. And then land back on the aircraft carrier. And it's really funny, now I'm getting proper like homesick for, is that the right phrase, for flight sims. The only flight sim I can play now is on Grand Theft Auto 5. If I steal a plane, I just go, yeah, it's like a flight sim. Yeah, what happened to flight sims anyway? One thing about the Amiga though was like chalk and cheese compared to the old 8-bit days, and don't get me wrong, some people do some really cool stuff with the, you know, the limitations of those early computers like the Spectrum and things like that. But when I first got my Amiga, almost instantly the sound and especially the music was just like, oh my god. And I always think of, if somebody said to me what's the best Amiga music, one thing I just always just instantly springs to mind is the theme to Lotus 2 by Andrew Morris and Sean Southern. I remember putting that disc in and it starts off with a sample of like chicka-chicka, like almost something like from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and then this cool hi-hat kicks in of like, you know, almost like Isaac Hayes or something like that, like thing from Shaft. And it goes into this cool keyboard part, this dun 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 dun. it's like instantly like you think, oh my god, what is this? I used to just sometimes load that up just so I could let the title music play. And even now I like listen to that music and it's like, oh my god, it's still there good, it still sounds so clear. But leading off from like the music and sound and things like that, this is one thing I used to love using on my Amiga, was this Stereo Master sampler that I used to use with a program called Audio Master. And you'd like sample stuff, you could plug stuff in the back there, like anything with an headphone jack, really, like a microphone or a vinyl record player or tape deck or CD player if you're particularly fancy. I used to love like just try and get samples to really work, and nothing better than if you got something that looked like a bit of a bass line or a drum pattern or something like that. And you could put those samples into this thing called Octamed, and it would have like 4 channels. You could do like left and right panning and things like that. I used to just do some like little simple melodies and things like that. But if you really knew what people were doing, like, you know, or if you saw somebody who knew what they were doing, you did some really cool stuff with it. And case in point was somebody like Calvin Harris. This is only the single acceptable in the 80s, but his actual first album was done on his brother's Amiga, or so I've read anyway. I think HMV, I read it in this little leaflet, it was like, new album by Calvin Harris. Like, I remember using my brother's Amiga and stuff like that. I always think it's kind of funny about this in particular is because that, like, when I used to use my Amiga and people say, oh, you'll go get a job, it's a good job Calvin Harris didn't to abide by that advice, because of inventing that album on his Amiga, he got to bang Taylor Swift. And now unfortunately though, she's been taken away by Tom. I'm going to be James Bond Hiddleston, because that was his low-key pokey stick right there, did that. But talking about music on the Amiga as well, and this is composed 100% on Amiga. This is the Amiga back for the future, when Petro Tyschtschenko was running the company from the ESCOM days. For some reason I've got a signed version and an unsigned version. This is when I went to the World of Amiga show in the mid-90s, I think it was late 90s. There was always a cool thing about that though, because I saw these really nice Americans and they were like, oh, isn't everybody dead polite in London? I was like, not really. And they were like, you here for the soccer tournaments? Like, nah, computer show. But, oh, another thing as well, talk about like cool Amiga music, and I don't know why, this is like one of the things, looking back on it, how I didn't click in, I'll never know. But Bomb the Bass did the theme tune to Xenon 2. And like you listen to that music now, and it's just Assault on Precinct 13 by John Carpenter. I don't know if they sampled it or played it again or something like that. Where it's like, wow, it's like, how did they get away with that? It's like, oh, it's a good job there's no internet then and stuff like that. And yeah, another great piece of Amiga music was the Game Over screen to Shadow of the Beast 2. This really like Joe Satriani, Steve Vai guitar piece. It's about 40-50 seconds long, but my god is it good. It's really cool. And Cannon Fodder as well. Like, Cannon Fodder was amazing because the music for that was like, you know, war, never been so much fun. 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 Go to your brother, kill him with your gun, leave him lying in his uniform, dying in the sun. It's all about killing and stuff, and even though the graphics were small, you did feel for the characters if they got killed. You're like, no. And Sensible Soccer as well. Sensible Soccer was literally one of the best games you could get for like the Amiga. You know, it was like a really good football game, and the sound was awesome as well. Actually, talk about music as well. Rockstar Ain't My Answer was an amazing game. This was like really cheap. I used to love this because it was like you could sort of do like management on it, and you could pick which band members you wanted and stuff like that, and where you were going to shoot the music video. Was it Cricklewood or Hollywood? Still got the disc in here and everything. But going back to like, it's almost like the gunship instructions, but it even had like a fake TV guide in there and things like that. Like the little details like that they would do on games and stuff. One of the actual listings that made me laugh when I was looking at this, it's a film, Night of the Living Y-Fronts. I realised I got nearly all my comedy from this kind of stuff. This and Mad Magazine is where 99% of my comedy comes from. But then this is the pièce de résistance. This is the one of the last Amigas that ever came out, the CD32.
Incredible graphics and colors, so many colors. Our world would never be the same again.
CD 32-bit console, and it had this thing on the back here that if you unscrew this and you could put a cartridge in there, so you could play like films on CD. It was like a precursor to DVD, and there's the Amiga CD32. And a bit of trivia for you: if you get Scrabble letters, CD is worth 32 points. Oh, 3 and 2 points. Coincidence? Probably. One thing is though as well, because every generation goes on and scorns the next, right? But I always thought my generation growing up, we had like really cool stuff where you had like hair metal bands with all this awesome permed hair and stuff like that. And you know, we had like multiplex cinemas and all these cool things kicking in. But when I look back at the first time I went on the internet, it wasn't on a PC, wasn't on a Mac, it was a Commodore Amiga, believe it or not. And it just seems like a lifetime times 2 ago. When I look back on it and like, you know, can't believe that I'll be like, oh, in my day, you know, we used to have to wait for JPEGs loading up in installments, and I'd talk to people like in America who run these B-movie websites and things like that. I'd be like sending me emails saying, oh, we live in the UK, and because James Furman's got this tyrannical run over everybody with the BBFC, you can't watch certain horror films. We're like, are we actually into horror films if they're all banned? And I remember talking to him in Holland once who got John Carpenter's Vampires on Laserdisc. I think it was on like a film studies course or something like that. And it goes about, it felt like 3 years before I even got to see it in the UK. Time travelled or something like that. But another great thing about the Amiga though was things like public domain. You know, like you go into computer shops and give them a couple of quid and you could look through a big list of stuff that they'd have. You could get a bit of anything really, like just some small little bit of software, early version of an app, I guess. And you know, but the main thing I always remember it was for like technical demos, and like people really try and push the system, and like things like Jesus on Ease, which was this like rave set on 2 discs, and it felt like it was on for an hour or two. Forever, it was awesome, and it's still good even now. And then like people like Eric Schwartz, who went on to do Super Frog, he did these like cool animations that, like, you know, you'd like say you go and get them from like public domain shops and things like that. But another thing I definitely think it's worthy of mention is the Amiga being used in films like on film and TV shows, most notably for things like Sequest DSV, which is one of my favourite shows. Wish I did get that bigger boat in the end, right? And things like Babylon 5, and even the Ted Danson film Loch Ness. Not very often you can mention Ted Danson films, and I think they even did some of Tomorrow Never Dies on an Amiga. And I always remember at the end of City Slickers it said thanks to Commodore for the Amiga. So there's some Amiga special effects or Amigas being used in City Slickers. You need this thing called a video toaster though, so it was like an Amiga plus, but even so it was still you know, the basis for it was an Amiga, and it was pretty cool. But thanks for listening, and see you later, and keep it locked.
You could win a Commodore Amiga 500 Batman pack. But first, you must answer these riddles. I'm a pilot, a musician, a landscape gardener, and a teacher. Who am I? Second riddle. The Joker ain't so pretty. What's the name of his city? I'll give you a clue for these riddles. Watch the whole of this video very carefully. Give us the most original reason why you would like a Commodore Amiga 500 for your home, in 20 words or less.